tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting in the studio to be profiled is Jeffrey Herr and Lita Albuquerque. Historic preservation specialist Jeffrey Herr works in Los Angeles' Department of Cultural Affairs. He's edited a book called Landmark, LA Historical Cultural Monuments. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in literature from Pacific Azusa College, and he earned his master's in art history. Your thesis was on California art pottery.
That's right.
Is that right?
You got it.
And does that give you this background and everything, a cultural background in LA?
Well, I think the answer is no, but it certainly helps. There's a lot more that goes into historic preservation than just one medium.
Why did you pick pottery?
Oh, well, that maybe is sort of interesting. I don't know. I was given a piece of art pottery that my grandparents purchased on a trip west back in the early 30s.
Trip west. Where were you living?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, so then
yes,
they were
and
here.
they
Okay.
came by car all the way to the West Coast. They stopped in Colorado Springs, bought a piece of Van Briggle pottery that my mother had and gave to me, and I don't know, maybe that's how it got started.
Were those the ones that were glazed and had flowers on them?
It was glazed, but no flowers. Some very Art Nouveau figural pieces, quite floral in terms of their design, but
Flowing in design, but
not
with
painted flowers, if that's what you're referring
Yeah,
to.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Or in the clay.
Sometimes in the clay, very much.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of.
Precisely.
But all one color.
Yes,
I see.
monochromatic.
I see. So those are beautiful pieces.
Well, they are.
And they're very trendy now, aren't they?
Yes, and they're reissuing them, so it's hard.
Are they?
They are.
They're making
They're
them
still
now?
making the Van Briggle.
Oh,
but
isn't that interesting?
I do have to say it's very different from the California art pottery of the thesis.
Well, from the what was in the California art pottery thesis?
Well, you know, there wasn't much work done on that particular very small esoteric area, and the pottery that was made in California had this bright, glorious colors. The glazes were just reflective, I think, of both the freedom and the geographic
Was there
area.
a period that you covered, or did
Yes,
you?
1895 to 1920. Very short.
Very
and only
short.
about 12 different producers.
So it didn't get into Fiesta ware or any of that? It was
no.
too...
Actually, Fiesta ware was made by a California potter, but it was made in the Midwest.
What about Catalina tiles?
One of the big ones, yes.
Was that in your
yes,
time
it is.
frame?
Absolutely.
In your time
I
frame?
love Catalina.
So that had a lot of color to it, too.
Very much.
What were some of the other names at that time?
Oh,
I can't remember all of them.
Redlands Pottery was one of the very small producers.
From Redlands, California?
From Redlands, California. One of the bigger producers was California Faience in Berkeley.
Oh.
And you had them all the way to San Diego.
Was there anything to do with the clay or the dirt or the water in different areas of the state?
You know, it all gets into the arts and crafts movement, which was very much a sort of parochial-based movement, and they all like to use indigenous materials.
They did. And
Absolutely.
do you think that made a difference in the way their work showed? I mean, was that part of their genre?
I'm more convinced that it was the exotic flora and fauna of California that had a bigger influence on the
really?
design than the actual materials. Although you do have an argument with one San Francisco potter who looked for different colors of clay in California to
That's
use.
what I was wondering. Yeah, I wondered if it worked. Peter Volkus did all of his work up north in Oakland, and his things were very earthy and
Yes.
clay, more
very much.
reddish color,
Yeah.
weren't they? Out of college, where did you go? Here you are with masters in art pottery.
Well, I sort of got sidetracked into banking.
Oh, you did?
I did.
You had another life?
I had another life before this. But in the mid-'80s, I went back to school to get my master's in art history and then went on to curatorial work and sort of segued through a very circuitous route of getting into historic preservation.
But does art history lend itself, is that the next step, historic preservation?
Well, it doesn't have to be, but it
But
was
could it
for
be?
me, absolutely. Any kind of wider general background in art history is going to be helpful for a preservationist.
You spent some time curating shows at the Barnsdale Junior
Arts Center
Junior Arts
Gallery.
Center.
Yes, I had to think a minute.
Fill my words in for me,
It's
please.
been a while.
I think you curated a show with John Register and one with George Herms.
Oh, yes.
And you wrote catalogs for them?
I did. The George Herms retrospective was a major exhibition that encompassed the Municipal Art Gallery as well, and that was just, well, George was such a fantastic person.
And you wrote the catalog?
I wrote one essay of the
see,
catalog.
I
It was a big catalog.
But you know, to me, I adore George Herms too, and his work is really about preservation and
Yes, it is.
reliving. And as he says, I find something on the street and I give it another life.
That's very perceptive of you.
But isn't it? So
you're
we can,
absolutely right about the preservationist aspect, and I hadn't even thought of that till you mentioned it. But
well, you were a part of it. It was all working in your background.
Well,
you know, in the back of your mind.
I knew that I was actually preserving some of the paperworks that George had, because I would go to his studio and he'd say, well, now over there's a big bag, you can look through that today.
And he knew exactly
yeah.
what was in that big bag.
Yes, he did. Yes,
Let's quickly move to your next gig, was Couturier Gallery.
Oh,
Of course, that comes out of your art pottery background.
absolutely.
Because they show pottery, don't they?
At that time, they were exclusively arts and crafts,
arts and
decorative
crafts.
art,
Okay,
and
better.
a lot of pottery, yes. But from there, I went on to curating at the Municipal Art Gallery and the Junior Arts Center.
Oh, I see. So that was before that.
That was, yes.
And then before the LA Cultural, you were at Banning House.
Actually, that was after.
Oh, it was?
This does get complicated.
Okay. I should just throw out these names and then let you tell me. Banning House.
The Banning Residence Museum, actually, the home of Phineas Banning, who was one of the major historical figures in the history of Los Angeles.
I can see that from your art history course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can see you going into that. You were the director there.
Yes, for 5 years.
Long Beach, is it?
San Pedro, the
Oh, San
harbor
Pedro.
area. You're right in the geographic neighborhood.
I was born in Long Beach and lived in San Pedro. So whoever hears of San Pedro,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly. Well, the Banning residence is really in Wilmington, which is just this tiny little town.
Even smaller, even.
Exactly.
But in like this little triangle. And was that Mrs. Call's family?
Yes, it was. Her great-great-grandfather was Phineas Banning.
Oh, it was
Yes,
that close.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a family that's given a lot to the public welfare, to USC
Yes.
and opening this museum.
Oh,
and
yes.
all up and down the state as
Mhm.
well. Now, you've written a book.
Oh, we're getting there.
Landmark. We're finally there. We're there. How could you pick? The book, first of all, is divided into areas.
Yes, it is.
And so did you go to those areas, or did you find the landmarks first and then put the areas together?
Well, first of all, Los Angeles has been in the preservation business since 1962, which comes as a surprise to some people. So we have 700 landmarks in this book, but we're already up to about 730. We had to cut it off at some point in order to get the book printed. And as you well know, Los Angeles is a large geographic area, the city itself. And so that's how we sort of came to deciding to do it by geographic area.
I see. Well, how did you pick the landmarks? Do you want to hand me this
Oh,
book?
sure.
And then I want to just show, these are landmarks that I know.
Okay,
the museum, excuse me, the airport.
that's right, the
LAX,
theme building.
And
City Hall.
City Hall. So those were pretty easy to pick.
Well, you have to remember that I don't pick them.
Oh.
These are nominated, and they have to go through a 3-step process that involves our Cultural Heritage Commission and approval by the City Council before they are actually given landmark designation.
But you picked them for this book.
Well, I picked the ones that went on the cover.
And the backside, these are pretty good too.
Well, we have world famous Watts Towers. I mean, that is international visitors, their number one request is Watts Towers.
Oh, that's interesting to know.
Absolutely.
And the bottom one?
And that is the Tower Theater on Broadway. You know, we have the largest concentration of movie palaces of anywhere in the United States.
And the top?
The top is the Level Health House, a modernist building.
Oh, from the 30s or 40s?
Yes, yes, it is. Not all landmarks have to be ancient.
That's interesting too.
Yeah, we have a lot of landmarks. In fact, the diversity of our cultural and social history is, I think, really well represented in this book, and helps a reader or someone just interested to see what we are in terms of a city.
Before, I'm going to just open this one page just because it's West LA.
Okay.
And is it a library in West LA?
There are some libraries, but this is actually one of the Jansen buildings that was done for this Westwood when it was developed. Yes.
Right. Oh, that's right. It looks like a library, that Jansen building.
Well, and that's because Spanish Revival was used for a lot of buildings, including public buildings. Our Bertram Goodhue Russell Central Library is Spanish Revival.
This is an interesting, the
clock, the Stromberg clock, yes, on Hollywood Boulevard.
Is it still there?
It certainly is.
Is everything in this book still around?
Do you have a box of Kleenex somewhere?
Oh, that's how I feel too. Should we cry about it?
Yeah, it's not. Sometimes things just are destroyed by fire. Other times they're knocked down in purpose, and sometimes things were gone long before even our landmark legislation was in place.
Well, I'm glad. This is one of my favorite things, is historic preservation, and I'm so glad there's somebody like you who loves it, and that a book could come out like this, so that when things happen or when we have a landmark, no one's going to be able to touch it.
I hope so too.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
You're welcome.
And don't go away, because we'll be right back with artist Lita Albuquerque. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with artist Lita Albuquerque, who was raised in Tunisia and went to school in Carthage, ancient Carthage. How wild. As a teenager, she returned to California, went to Santa Monica High School and UCLA. She's shown in galleries and museums around the world, but not just on canvas. She's done a lot of installations of different types. When you started working, Lita, did you think you were going to be doing installations or working on canvas?
No, I had no idea. I thought that I would just be working on canvas. I thought I'd be a straight painter. And then I think the influence of having been raised in North Africa, coupled with what was going on in the art world at that time, which was Robert Irwin, Smithson, Michael Heiser.
Were those people at UCLA when you were there?
No, they
were
weren't
just
there.
Watching?
But they were, yeah, exactly. Had they not been doing land art, I would have never gone out, I don't think, in the environment. That was a very big influence.
Oh, but how did you think you could manage it? It's so ephemeral.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't put your hands on anything, can you?
No, no. In fact, it's so ephemeral that the wind blows it sometimes.
Oh, there.
So, but interestingly enough, since I was doing these ephemeral pieces out in the desert, I then was asked to do, I did a piece around the Washington Monument, and then Jack Glenn, who was my dealer at the time, wanted me to do an obelisk for a civic center outside of Las Vegas.
So this is a desert piece.
Yeah, those are the ephemeral pieces I did in the 70s.
Is
with,
that
with
right?
powdered pigment. Yeah.
And then who would come and see something like this?
Well, there were certainly the crew was all there. Sometimes I would have some people out there. Mainly people saw it through documentation.
But that's basically what it was,
Yes.
documentation?
Yes.
Is the next piece, too. I might as well show the next piece
Absolutely.
in this catalog, because this also reminds me of that Irwin kind of light
Yes.
and centering, but this is inside.
This is inside. This was done for the Hirshhorn Museum in 1981, and it's a 3-foot tall rock just with powder pigment on top of it. And the circle that you're seeing is actually a copper ring. It's about 900 pounds, and it's cantilevered off the wall at the angle of the axis of the Earth. And then the light.
Can you ever use this installation somewhere else? Would you ever use it, or is it just for a specific space?
It's pretty specific. However, I have sometimes done, Fred Wiseman bought a very large piece that I'd done for the Santa Monica Museum, and it's in his foundation. So there are certain
In other
elements
words,
that can
you made the piece
Right.
for the Santa Monica Museum, and
Yes.
then it was moved to a private.
be. Exactly. And that happens regularly.
The living in Tunisia, what were you doing in Tunisia? I saw a picture here. I'm going to also find it.
Okay. Well, it was great.
Is this it?
No, this is Egypt.
This is Egypt, but we could talk
Yes.
about Egypt from Tunisia.
We can, absolutely. My mother essentially is from Tunisia, and I was raised there.
Ah.
And I was raised in Carthage. There was a convent school there. I was raised in a convent, this Romanesque building overlooking the Carthaginian ruins. And in fact, I used to play in the Roman amphitheater and the Colosseums. And I remember I used to look for the blood of the Christians. They used to tell me these incredible stories.
They
Yes.
were teaching you in the convent.
And I think that influenced me a lot, that closeness to the earth and the color of the sky and the rocks there. It had a
There
lot to
aren't
do
that
with the work.
many ruins, but the museum is great. I
Yes.
mean, there isn't much of a
Yes.
city left of Carthage.
Yeah.
But
The baths. The baths are there, the Colosseum's there, and then you've been there. So.
And the museum,
Yes,
which
the
is-
museum, which was wonderful with all the mosaics.
Oh,
all the
incredible.
old mosaics.
But I think Tunisia is a land that just swallows you up. The color.
It's very sensual. Everyone in the street, at least when I was growing up, is a poet. The nature is very powerful. When there's a wind, it's a wind. You know, it's Africa. You know, there's really, I'll never forget when flocks of birds would come and this, and then stop. You know, that very intense nature, and I think that really was a powerful influence for me.
But does it also, the color, the
Yes,
pigment?
yes,
the
totally.
pigment that you use.
Totally. The blue that I use, which is
Yeah.
now known as a kind of my signature color, the blue came out of, you know, when you think of the Mediterranean, you think of Greece, you think of the whitewash, and the blue, it really came out of that. Yes,
and
this
the red. This is the blue I think you're talking
Yes,
about.
it
What is
is.
this piece?
It's ultramarine. This is a piece I did for Gannett Publishers outside of Washington, D.C. in McLean, Virginia. And it's in the executive offices. And that's a 5-foot diameter blue sphere that has
I have another one here.
a series of
This
glass boxes that are filled with blue powdered pigment that have a poem written on it that lead towards the blue sphere.
So this
And
is
then
there,
it's
permanent
there. And on the
installation.
sides, there are these silk screens. They're very tall. They're 9 feet by 5 feet of different star systems that were done through the ages. So the whole thing I call aperture. It has to do with perspective
Because
and
this
the
does
earth.
aperture. It looks
Yes.
like you're looking through cameras
Exactly.
and you're doing different things. This is in our country. You did a piece for the Cairo Biennale,
Yes.
which is pretty cool. I love Cairo too.
That was great. That was great.
And you were out at the pyramids. You were in Giza.
Yeah, I was in Giza. I was actually given the permission to work right around the pyramids, 3 kilometers south of the pyramids. I placed the pyramids in a field of stars so that where the stars were at night, I aligned them with blue powdered circles all over.
Well, did you take astronomy courses?
Actually, I didn't, but I'm a real astronomer buff, and I have a lot of people that I know who are astronomers, friends.
And that can help you with what you're
Oh.
doing and pinpoint what you're
yes,
doing?
Yes, I work with astronomers. To get the exact information, I have to work with people who really know what they're doing in terms of how to find it. And you can also do it through computer program.
Oh, so you
There's-
can,
yeah.
you actually understand, because I think you work a lot with that,
Yes.
but you also have these kind of ethereal,
Right.
you know, other kinds of feelings put into your work.
You mean that the viewer gets, or
Yeah,
that?
but that we all get. I
Right.
mean, that you're putting in and that,
Right,
that we then
right.
experience.
Well, what I'm really interested in doing with the work is to take the moment through space-time. It's just as if I'm cutting a slice through space-time. So it goes all the way from, intergalactic all the way down to the Paleolithic.
But in all different, and
In
that
different-
covers all different parts of the world.
Exactly, exactly. So each one is a different moment. For instance, right now I'm working in Sacramento in collaboration with Mitchell Desjarnais, and we're doing an entire star map over this park that we've designed in alignment to the Capitol. And there'll be sculptural elements that will be aligned to the sky as it was on September 9th, 1850, which is when California became a state.
That
So
was
that locks it
that
in.
is so. But you're working with a Frenchman. Is he a Frenchman?
French background, but
French
he's American.
background, but he's
Yeah.
American.
He's
But
actually
you,
lived in Paris.
You lived in Paris
Yes,
too.
yes.
Did that have an influence on what you were doing?
In that particular piece?
Anything.
Yes, of course. In a different way. I think Tunisia was much more of an influence because it's about nature.
And color. and
Paris and France is more the poetic, and Rimbaud
you
and
write.
Napoleon. I do a lot of
You write
writing.
on
Yeah.
on your pieces.
Yes, I do a lot of writing. In fact, for Sacramento, we're writing 57 texts that 3 different themes, 3 narratives of the quest for terrestrial paradise, the cosmos, and the history of gold.
How
and
do you
we're
find
interweaving
it?
all-
How do you find the text?
Research. A lot of research.
Does
Just-
any of it, like, do you wake up in the middle of the night and
Yes.
something falls into your
Yes.
head? Yes.
It does. Yes.
Or do you have ideas and you want to do something? How does somebody know that they should commission you to do something?
Well, in this case, I was on a short list, and both of us presented this piece, and they loved the idea, and so we had already told them what we wanted to do. And sometimes for instance, for the cathedral, they knew the kind of work that I was doing, and so they asked me to do it.
But the cathedral wasn't a competition.
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was as
Oh,
well?
yes, it was. Yes, it
But
was.
Sacramento was a
Yes,
competition.
yes. Most of these public projects are.
Our competitions.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Oh,
that
yeah.
the cathedral was. And we're
Yeah.
talking about Raphael Moneo's cathedral, Our Lady of
Our Lady of the Angels.
the Angels in downtown Los Angeles.
Right.
And the art program with that cathedral was incredible. They have the most wonderful artists working. Did you work together or did you all do your own
No,
thing?
we pretty much did our own thing. Father Vasco was the person who essentially got all the people together. Then there was a committee who chose us, and we worked separately, but we knew about what each other was doing.
You did the drawings for the
Yeah, what
fountain. Were there other people competing for this fountain?
Yes.
Oh, there were.
Yes,
oh,
there
I
were.
see.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
there was.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. The piece was done in collaboration with Robert Kramer, who's an architect, and we were asked to do a proposal for the entrance courtyard fountain. And so right now, the fountain is there, and we're completing the rest of the piece.
I'll show
in
this
the
'cause
next,
this is
in the
another
next few
side of
months.
it.
Right.
The fountain is there, and it has blue around the bottom.
The fountain is 18 feet in diameter. It's a circle, and it's very flat, and it has the words, I shall give you living water in 37 languages.
And this
And then this, what you're seeing
piece we
here,
have on the
is,
side.
is what's going to be happening at the cathedral in the next few months. We're sandblasting in the paving around the fountain. The fountain is where that circle is. The sky as it was on the date of the opening.
But you had already calculated
Yes.
that, right?
4 years ago.
You'd calculated how it was going to,
Yes.
how the sky was going to be.
Exactly.
And you had already planned on
Exactly.
doing this.
And what was interesting about that is that I had wanted the sun and the moon and like Orion, you know, very famous constellations, but because it was a very specific time, it had to be the Vespers, the night before the opening. The sun wasn't out. The moon happened to not be out. There was no
So
Orion.
what happened?
So it was beautiful. It is what it is. That's what I love about it. And so what you're seeing there is the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun.
Oh, this round, I see.
And also there is another line here. It's an arc, a blue arc. It's actually the horizon of the Earth. So it's a map looking through the horizon of the Earth. So when you first come into the space here, through here, you're walking in
You
secular.
enter the space from here.
Right, you're in secular space. Then you step over the horizon of the Earth, and you're in the cosmos with this.
Oh,
with
all
this
around
fountain.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. And then the water isn't like a fountain that's just splashing water. It's just bubbling out of here,
Exactly,
isn't it?
just one line that's aligned to magnetic north. And then it has these...
So that's totally planned
Yeah,
on your...
that's totally planned. And it has these cold blue rocks all around it, both in all three of the pools. There's 3 pools there.
And then the background?
Now the background is going to be completed, hopefully. We're still working on getting that approved, actually. But that is supposed to be white marble also, just like the white marble.
I see.
And then it will have a blue glass sculpture down the middle.
Where do you find the marble? It must be a special kind of
It's actually,
something
yes,
that you-
it's special. We looked at a lot of different stone, but we picked actually a marble from Vermont. It's called Danby Royale, and it's from Vermont, and it's got this beautiful vein in it.
And then all of the writing on it is in different fonts?
Yes,
How
in
did
different
you
languages.
decide that?
Well, it took a long time. It's just all graphically how it works together. Originally, it was going to be with my handwriting, and then they were afraid it wasn't going to be legible.
But it's
And
in
so-
Russian and in Arabic.
Russian,
and-
Ukrainian, Arabic, Chinese, Aramaic, ancient Greek, Cambodian,
and
Sri
it's all written
Lankan.
in that language. I
Exactly.
mean, from that language.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you had people come up to it and
Yes.
say, "Oh, this is my"?
I have, and it's just really wonderful. They're looking for their language, and in fact, I'm giving them a map of where all the languages
Is that
are.
right?
And when you see the first day when I saw these, different people from different countries come and looking for it, and people thanking me for having. Somebody told me that they picked up one of the blue rocks and kissed it and put it back, and I
that's
thought,
so
wow,
sweet.
it's out of our hands, and it's really kind of wonderful what happens.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And the cathedral is a place that everyone should go and see what's really the core of downtown Los Angeles,
it's a real
and the
destination.
way they've chosen the artists to be a part of it. I think it's been great. Where do we see you next?
Next, actually, is in Sacramento.
it?
That'll open March of next year.
And then
that's the
after
big-
that, you have.
After that,
are you
we've got
still-
lots of irons in the fire.
Do you still do things on campus?
Yes, I do.
Do you?
I do. I just had a show with Peter Blake in Laguna Beach.
So someone can
So
actually put your
you can
work on
actually,
their wall.
Yeah, I do things that are sellable.
Let me just show this canvas, this catalog, and we have to go. We hope that everyone will keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, Los Angeles 917, 44th floor, and see us next time. Keep watching for us. Thanks.